Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. We are right here in the end, having finished the Ender Dragon fight in the last episode. We are stepping through to the Outer End Islands, where we're going to explore a little to see if we can locate our first End City and get hold of our Elytra. Now, if you're lucky on your first trip through to the end, when you end up going through the gateway, the End City may even be right in front of you, because much like the other generated structures of Minecraft, End Cities will generate randomly throughout these areas, and you may even find one as close as the first area you spawn into the end. However, in our case, it doesn't look like we have been so lucky, so we are going to have to do a little bit of exploring out here to see if we can locate an End City out here on one of these islands. Now, this is one of the points at which you may want to turn up your render distance a little bit to give yourself an advantage. Right now I'm on a 16 chunk render distance. We can boost that to about 24, and the game only has additional blocks to render in the distance. It doesn't have to worry too much about textures and everything, so hopefully this should load up pretty fast, and that will give us an extra radius of blocks around us that we can spot End Cities by. It doesn't look like we're spotting any on any of the neighboring islands though, and we need to take note of which direction we need to travel here. Now, I believe if we head back in this direction, yeah, that's towards the positive Z, which means we are traveling back towards the central island if we go that way, and there'll be nothing but the void in between. So out in this direction is really where we want to be traveling. We can head directly north, we can head at a diagonal from our portal that we spawned in from. I think we're going to just try and take it organically for this first trip to the end. We're going to bridge out to a couple of these other islands, and we'll see what lies beyond. Now, here you will find one of the reasons why I recommended bringing a whole bunch of wood with you in your ender chest, because if we bring a couple of stacks of this with us, we're going to have plenty of material to build bridges with. In fact, if we turn that all into slabs, we're going to come away with a lot more material, and so I think we're going to get a couple of stacks of slabs ready for our first bridge. Now, as long as we keep the crouch button held down, it should be perfectly safe for us to bridge out over the void, looking down to make sure we avoid eye contact with any Enderman, and attaching a slab to the side of these blocks each time. Bedrock Edition players will of course have the advantage of being able to look forward as you bridge, although once again, I recommend doing this very carefully since we're over the infinite void here, and avoid eye contact with any Enderman. You may want to choose to bridge to some of these islands as kind of a stopgap, as like a way station if you like. Using the middle mouse button to pick block these slabs actually comes in really handy for not pausing on the edge of a block and opening your inventory, because there's a chance that you might fall into the void if you're crouched on the very edge of a block. So there are a couple of things to make sure that you do in order to stay safe out here. Either way, this is going to be a bit of a workout for your pinky fingers, and you'll need to concentrate in the process. But we're going to put down our crafting table over here, craft a few more slabs, and that should get us to this other island. In a second, we're going to see the importance of not looking where we're going, because we can already hear the sound effects of the Enderman that have generated over here on this island, and the Enderman will spawn in great numbers over here once we arrive, so it's always worth making sure you keep your head down while you're exploring like this. We could of course do this with the pumpkin on our head, but if you feel like bridging like that, be my guest. Personally, I prefer to concentrate and have full vision when I'm bridging out across the void, so it's usually better for me to keep the pumpkin head off. But over here in the distance, we are seeing the first signs of what we came here for, and it looks like a very small example, but you know what? There might actually be a couple of extra rooms there. Fantastic. Right over there is our first End City, and luckily for us, it is an End City that has a ship flying away from one of the towers. These End ships are the most sought after thing in the game, really, because those are the places you will find the Elytra, the wings that we're going to be using to traverse the world, basically from now on. Before we can do that, though, we do have to get there, and it looks like the majority of this landmass is connected. A minor amount of bridging will take place, but I think we'll be able to do it. So when we approach this End City, we will need to be on our guard, and oh my goodness, there's another one over there. That's incredible. 2 End Cities within close proximity of each other is a very, very good find. Also, a neat way of showing that not all of these End Cities are going to generate with ships, although apparently more than 50% of them do. I think it's supposed to be 60% of these End Cities or something like that end up with ships. It's kind of remarkable because you search for these for a while, and so often you end up finding one that doesn't have a ship attached to it. Anyway, while we could pillar directly up to that ship and claim the Elytra immediately, I think we're going to tackle this the old-fashioned way. We're going to walk into the front door of the End City, and we will not be alone when we do do. These places are guarded by mobs named Shulkers, which are kind of neat little creatures actually. They will fire these pellets at you, whoop, and if you end up getting hit by one, then you'll be levitated into the air, which is one of the reasons I brought the water bucket and the slow falling potion with me. Shulkers will stay attached to the outside of blocks like so and fire these pellets intermittently when they notice you. So there are ways that you can avoid getting hit by them. You can obviously dodge around them and they will follow a kind of path through the air in order to attempt to hit you. Oh, we just got the advancement for entering an end city, so I must have been inside the hitbox of the city there for a second. There we go. We ended up killing one of the Shulkers, and the other one has teleported up to the roof there, but that looks like we took care of him nice and easily. We can wait for these bullets to dissipate. We can even block them with our shield like we can other projectiles. After a few seconds, the levitation effect will wear off, and there's another Shulker shooting at us from somewhere, so we've clearly aggroed one. I'm just not entirely certain where. I think it's in that upper room of the end city, so let's walk on in, climb up the stairs here, and on the floor above us, it seems like there's going to be at least one Shulker. Yes, there it is. Okay, well, we'll take him out, and it looks like he has dropped our first Shulker shell. I haven't mentioned these most of the time I've been talking about the end, but we now have access to Shulker shells, and we'll get 2 of those so I can really show you what the deal is with them. But Shulker shells can be crafted into Shulker Boxes, which are a more advanced form of storage than what we have been dealing with so far. There is one more Shulker here at the top of this tower, and it's worth noting that the Shulkers will take more damage when they are open. They can still take a small amount of damage when they're closed, but really you want to be attacking them while they're open for the best chance of dealing damage. That Shulker dropped another Shulker shell, which means this is a perfect opportunity to open up our ender chest, grab a couple more spruce logs to make ourselves a chest. We will surround the chest with 2 Shulker shells, and that will give us a Shulker box, which will look like a Shulker when we place it in the world, except it's not going to open and attack us. Instead, when we right-click on it, it has an inventory very similar to a chest. The difference being, though, once we put some items in here and we break the Shulker box, those items remain inside the Shulker box as contents, and we can pick it up and take it with us. So much like chests, they are incredibly useful for storage, but with the added bonus of being able to pick them up and take them with you. And that is one of the things that players rely on in Minecraft in order to take on larger projects, because now we have the option to have portable inventory beyond just the ender chest and what we can carry with us. So naturally, when players come to the end trying to raid one of these cities, they're looking for a larger city so that it is more populated with Shulkers. And most of the time, oh gosh, that arrow rebounded against me with kind of a delay there. And most of the time when you fight these Shulkers, you'll want to attack them with looting for the highest chance of getting at least one Shulker shell. Now the bullets will disperse after a little while, they'll just fly into a block and pop. We can also attack them with our sword, and if you're a little bit more accurate than I am, or if you're able to hit it with a bow, you should be able to get rid of the Shulker bullets pretty easily without getting levitated away. However, the levitation effects can prove to your advantage because these are tall structures, and often you'll rely on levitation to get from one part of the structure to another. Having climbed up this shorter tower, it seems like the larger tower that we saw from the outside is attached over here. So we're going to run through this room. We'll take out the Shulkers that are inside of here and the one on the door, bearing in mind that Shulkers can teleport to the outside of these structures as well. So you can actually see one of them dangling off the side of the city there, and I'm probably going to levitate up to here, wait for the levitation effect to wear off with a roof over my head, and see if I can get an angle on him from here, because if I can shoot him from here, yes, there we go, he might end up dropping a Shulker shell. Looks like he just dropped experience, so there's no need to really go after that right now. We can move on to the inside of the building, where here on these 3-tiered sections of the towers, you will often find a loot chest and an ender chest waiting for you, guarded by 2 Shulkers, one on either side, and another Shulker somewhere in the room. Once we take out each of these guards on the corners, which we can do with a couple of well-placed swings of the sword, and that one decided to teleport away as well, we'll be able to grab all of these Shulkers' shells and loot the chests that are in the room. These chests contain some of the better loot in Minecraft. We got some fully enchanted diamond leggings, although Protection 2 isn't much to talk about. We've got some regular old diamonds and some gold in here as well. But of course, we can now take this chest, transform it into a Shulker box, and use that to store these items in. So any loot that we end up with, we're going to store in this Shulker box here, and we'll bring some of the other stuff with us. Shulker boxes can of course then be put into the ender chest, where they will retain their contents, meaning that we can take home a whole bunch of stuff. In fact, we could even pack some of this down into a Shulker box to create a little bit more space. Naturally though, you cannot put a Shulker box inside of a Shulker shulker box. It doesn't work that way. That would lead to basically infinite storage in a single block space. Seems pretty exploitative. I don't think the developers want that to be in the game. So we're going to bring this with us. We're going to throw that into our ender chest for now to keep it contained in there. We'll probably put some extra shulker shells in there as well. And that way we have a little bit of a clearer inventory here. We're going to keep some of this other stuff on us, replenish our golden carrots, because I'm taking a lot of damage here, so I'm eating a lot. And if we wanted to, we could always bring the ender chest with us, since we have silk touch on our pickaxe. In fact, I did the rather silly thing of putting all of my slabs away in that last shulker box. We're going to need those, because we're going to climb the central pillar of this tower, and we're going to end up in a much larger room. Now, the way people like to climb these towers is often just by jumping between the purple slabs that are sticking out of the outside here, but it can be turned into a pretty accessible spiral staircase simply by placing slabs or full blocks on the corners as you make your way up here. Once we reach the top, we're going to find ourselves in a room with a bunch more shulkers hanging from the walls, and it's here that having a shield is really going to come into play, because we all need to block a few of these as we travel up the tower in order to make sure that we don't have that levitation effect permanently. The shulkers will also occasionally be hitting each other with these pellets, and you'll sometimes find that the shulkers end up duplicating themselves that way, because that's a recently introduced mechanic that allows shulkers to clone themselves, effectively allowing the player to farm shulker shells later on in the game. And we'll get to that in future, but for now I'm a little bit pinned in here with a couple of the shulkers. There we go, we've levitated up towards the top. We're going to place a few blocks or slabs or whatever we've got on us up here so that we can wall ourselves off here so that the shulkers won't be able to see us, and so that we can rest and take a look at the contents of these two loot chests. This one here looks like it has, Feather Falling 4 Protection 3 boots, that's pretty good. And this one here has a little bit of iron gear with some pretty decent enchantments on it as well, some emeralds, a diamond horse armor, and a bit of gold. That's not too shabby. Any of the loot we want to keep can be thrown into our shulker box here. I'm probably just going to chuck out the iron stuff, even though we could disenchant it with a grindstone for XP or something like that. It's largely speaking not worth having. Some of it even has curses on, and if we put an iron chest plate with curse of binding on, that would be a bit of a disaster right now. So we'll put the remainder of this stuff back in our ender chest. We'll break our way out of this wooden barricade that we've constructed, and it's probably time to shoot down a few more of these shulkers. Now, ideally, we'd want to use looting on them to make sure we ended up with the maximum amount of shulker shells, but it can be pretty difficult melee attacking something that's glued to the walls. So typically, I find just taking them out with a bow from a distance is one of the better ways of doing it, and they'll still drop shulker shells pretty regularly. This is where I like to have my water bucket on me, because sooner or later we are going to take a fall, and if we want to, we can gently parkour our way around the outside here, but yes, we are going to end up falling eventually. And the ideal thing now is to get hit with levitation again and fall down to some of the areas where these shulker shells have dropped while we've been fighting the shulkers. Yep, there we go, we managed to get one more. We'll take out this shulker who's attached to the wall here, and oh man, I just need to get down here. Okay, well, if we end up placing a water bucket against the wall here, even though we've got levitation, we can use the shift button to push ourselves downwards a little bit. That can help us push down to floor level and collect the remaining shulker shells. Without the shulkers firing bullets at me, I'm going to levitate myself up this wall simply by using the bucket of water trick, and sooner or later we'll get hit by one of those shulker bullets and be able to continue our journey. Our next destination is the outside of one of these towers, because if we are headed in the right direction, yes, we see an open gateway in front of us, and that leads directly out towards the End City ship, the place where we are going to get our Elytra. There's even a section of the End City has generated directly above here, which should give us a better vantage point if we want to travel out to the ship. There's also another one of these 3-layer towers attached nearby, so I'm going to run in here, fight as many shulkers as I need to, and grab the loot from the chest. And it's funny, because End Cities were introduced in Minecraft 1.9. We have been raiding these structures for years now, but the fact that shulkers can clone themselves now actually adds an interesting layer of challenge. This chest doesn't have a whole lot going for it. It's got a couple of diamonds and a saddle, which we might as well take, but I have tons of them from fishing. The main thing, though, is another opportunity to grab a chest and turn it into another shulker box. Ideally, you want to walk away from an end city with an even number of shulker shells. That way you'll have enough to make a decent amount of shulker boxes, but frankly, on this first run, I'll just take whatever I can get. Now, taking advantage of that levitation effect, we're going to levitate up to the roof here, where there is an exit to the roof, so we could have got up there from the area with the 2 loot chests, but if we want to, we can hop down onto this tower, climb our way up to the roof, and have a straighter shot to the End City ship over here. We do have a couple of shulkers lying in wait for us. It did look like that one dropped a shell, so hopefully we will handle this next section in enough time that we can get back down and grab that. But once again, now that shulkers are farmable, grabbing every available shulker shell is less of an issue than it was. So staircasing up to the roof here, it looks like we have a nice straight shot over to the End City ship. One way to get over there if you're more confident is to Ender Pearl, and if you do that, I recommend aiming for the mast in the center there. There we go, we ended up hitting the prow, but we are good. Now, you want to make sure that you don't end up hitting the back of the ship and falling, because that can lead to a fall down to the island there or into the void. Another reason to keep Ender Pearls on you is you can avoid a bit of fall damage from the Shulker levitation effect by simply Ender Pearling to the ground when you get high up enough. So there are a couple of important things to note here in the ship. First of all, the Shulker pellets are still flying. There is a brewing stand with 2 potions of instant health 2 in here, so we can always pick that up and bring that home with us if we want to, and the instant health might even be worth it if you've taken a beating here in the End City. One of the most important things, though, is down here in an item frame behind this Shulker, who, if he hits himself with a Shulker pellet, is potentially going to clone himself and make claiming the Elytra a little harder. Because yes, that's what's in the item frame beyond this Shulker. If we take him out with a couple more well-placed hits, the Elytra is waiting for us. We can grab this, we get the Sky's the Limit advancement, and we now have our first set of wings. The loot chests in here will also have a decent amount of stuff, sometimes diamonds, sometimes enchanted iron. We've got an efficiency mending pick, that's pretty good, and some Curse of Binding Unbreaking boots. The iron ingots are not to be sniffed at, actually, because so far my shield has lost about half of its durability, so we might need to craft another shield while we're here if we want to continue defending ourselves from all of these Shulker attacks. And you know what? I'm going to take both of these chests anyway. Never mind that it's iron gear. We can stuff it all in a shulker box and smelt it down later if we want to. But here in our inventory, we now have one of the most useful, powerful, and frankly awesome items in the game. We have Elytra, and Elytra go in the place of our chest plate slot, which, as you can see, sacrifices a lot of armor and a lot of protection enchantment that we've got on there, a lot of armor toughness as well, so it is leaving us a little bit more vulnerable than before, but we are infinitely more maneuverable. If I grab some fireworks out of here, we can take our first flight from up on the deck of this End City ship. I'll tuck the remaining potions away in the ender chest here as well, and we can pack down our shulker boxes to put in here as well. We're not going to add the unbreaking and mending book quite yet, because I want to demonstrate how Elytra durability works in the interim. There is another shulker hiding here at the back of the ship as well, so we can always break out this block, give it a couple of extra swipes, and it dropped a shulker shell. Fantastic. Before we leave, I am going to claim a couple of the blocks from around here so that we can use those to bridge out to the very front of the ship where there is a figurehead. The dragon's head appears here, and while it's not necessarily the head of the Ender Dragon we have just fought, it's worth claiming. Now, that has fallen directly down there to where I may have just looked directly at an Enderman. I'm not sure if I'm far enough away that I'm not going to aggro him or not, but that seems like a decent opportunity to go flying. What we need to do to activate our Elytra, the wings on our back, even though they look pretty good spread when you crouch, is to jump and then press jump again while we're still in the air. When we do that, the wings will unfold and we'll be able to glide downwards. Now, the Elytra are really for gliding because your velocity increases the further down you look, and if you head up again, you'll start to stall. So you can control your height a little bit, you can control the way you fly just by looking around with the mouse. It feels very intuitive once you get used to it. And there is our dragon head. We get to claim the dragon head as well. Wonderful stuff. Now, if we wanted to take off again and fly into the air with our Elytra, that's where the fireworks come in. If we jump, unfold our wings, you can see that we glide down a little bit when we do that, and then hit right click on the fireworks, we can fly upwards into the air and effectively boost ourselves around like this using firework rockets. And so those are the basics of flying with Elytra. We'll take a look at Elytra flight in a little bit more detail in a future episode, but for now what you need to know is that your Elytra's durability will decrease for every second you are in the air. It will deduct 1 point from the durability for each second that you fly. The team was looking into changing these mechanics for a while, and in one of the experimental snapshots, Elytra only took durability damage when you used fireworks. The speed that you could boost yourself with rockets and Elytra was also reduced in that snapshot, but those changes haven't taken effect for this full update. So if you've heard about those, don't worry, those changes aren't in effect, and we can still fly around pretty quickly using Elytra and rockets. We could even fly around with the dragon's head on our head if we wanted to, and it looks pretty snazzy and opens and shuts when you run around. But I think I'm probably going to keep my diamond helmet on right now. A little bit more fashionable and a little bit safer too. So that's how Elytra durability works. We can actually watch it count down as we sail through the air here, and it's important to make sure that your Elytra durability doesn't drop to 0. The wings themselves will not break entirely, you won't lose the item, but when they run out of durability, the wings will take on this kind of tattered appearance and you won't be able to fly with them. If you're in mid-air when that happens, tough luck, you're going to fall. And so that's why we ended up bringing an anvil and an unbreaking and mending book with us to the end, because we want to make sure that the durability on these lasts for as long as possible and that we can repair them if we need to. So we're going to immediately put unbreaking and mending on these wings. And with that, we have the most usable set of Elytra we are ever going to get. It's also worth noting, as I mentioned in the previous episode, that Phantom Membrane can be used to repair damaged Elytra. You can do that in an anvil. As you can see here, it's mended the remaining durability on that Elytra, so we can always spend a few more levels to do that, but it's not typically the approach players take, partly because Phantom Membrane is a bit tricky to get hold of, but mostly because with Unbreaking and Mending, it's so much easier to preserve durability on your Elytra. There may still be a couple of Shulkers lurking around here. I can certainly hear them opening and closing in the sound effects, but for now, I think we're probably going to move on. And with our Elytra attached to our back, this is going to make finding other end cities and exploring them a whole lot easier. We can simply boost ourselves over here with rockets, glide over to this end city, and start taking out the Shulkers that have spawned around the outside. It's even possible, if you combine slow falling and Elytra, to glide downwards really slowly, as long as you don't get hit by the levitation effect and the Shulkers end up levitating you into the air. So we're going to use that to take out the Shulker who's on the underside of this bridge section here. There we go. And once we're back inside, we can raid this end city from the top down. At least we don't need to worry too much about fall damage now we've got slow falling. And while this end city is smaller than the last one and doesn't have a ship for another set of Elytra, it's certainly got its fair share of Shulkers, so we can take these out for a few extra shells and a little bit more XP. And so we raid our second end city from the top down and emerge through the front door to take out the Shulkers guarding the entrance. Now, there's a couple of things we haven't noted about end cities yet, and also that we haven't noted about the islands around us, because this purple set of blocks is not one that we've really encountered before. We've seen purple glass before, we know what endstone brick is from crafting it out of endstone in the previous episode, but this purple block set is something that is worth explaining. These blocks will naturally generate here in the end as part of end cities, and the standard purple block is effectively a 2x2 tile-looking block. There's also purple pillar blocks, which are kind of similar to quartz pillar in how you craft them. You can do that in a stone cutter as well, and they have this kind of like six-pack abs look. Around the outside here, you'll notice these glowing rods that sparkle occasionally, and those are end rods. They're kind of like torches, except they don't need to be attached to a block. They will emit light level 15, and they look pretty snazzy. They've got this grey sort of suction cup style thing on one side, and they can be placed in different orientations as well. So they can be stuck to the side of blocks, they can even be stacked vertically on top of each other to create a too-high bar of light, which can look pretty good for modern lighting situations. The end city comes with its own patterned banners that actually kind of resemble the null texture that happens when something isn't textured, so that might be kind of an in-joke on the developer's part. Might just be a neat stylistic design for a city out here in the void. But growing all around us on these islands are these weird sort of purple plants, and these are chorus plants, named after the sound they make when they grow. We can actually shoot down these larger pods of the chorus plants, and those will turn out to be chorus flowers, which we can replant if we want to, and grow a few more of these. If we break the chorus plant at the base, it breaks in a kind of similar way to what cactus and sugarcane would do, except it breaks from the bottom upwards. Kind of similar to how bamboo works, actually, and that drops a bunch of chorus fruit. Chorus fruit is a foodstuff. As the name suggests, you can eat it, although it has some rather unusual effects. If you eat a chorus fruit, you will kind of teleport around in a small area, kind of similar to the area in which an Enderman can teleport, although I think with a slightly reduced range. Eating chorus fruit will replenish hunger and saturation, although not a great deal of it, but it is worth noting that that is a food source that you can have access to if you haven't brought enough food on one of your end city raids. It can be regrown from a chorus flower, so if we plant one of those, eventually it will start to grow, and the flowers can even split off into different directions, as you can tell from all of the different flowers growing on these plants. It sort of has this pipe-like structure that leads out into different flowers. That effectively allows you to repopulate the plant from a single flower. And look, there you go, we've got 2 flowers on this one now. If we wanted to, we could take both of these down. You don't need to shoot them down, it's just a convenient way of doing it. We can replant them a couple of blocks apart, and when they start growing, they can grow into several multi-headed plants. It's worth noting that if you break a chorus plant that has a flower on the top of it, it won't drop the chorus flower, so you do need to break those flowers independently of the plant itself before you break the remainder of it to gather the chorus fruit. And if I had brought a furnace with me, I could demonstrate that chorus fruit can actually be smelted. It kind of pops like popcorn in a furnace, and if you put a 2x2 of it in a crafting interface, you get a purple block, making this whole family of blocks renewable. Combining a popped chorus fruit and a blaze rod will also get you 4 of these end rods, so they're really nice to have around as a way of reproducing some of the blocks we see here in the end cities. But anyway, now we have enough of this stuff to take home with us, we could probably head on home. We do have a bit of a choice though. Do we want to stay in the end, fly around with our Elytra, potentially locate another end city ship, and get hold of a second backup set of Elytra in case anything should happen to these? That's usually a good idea, and it's probably something I will do when I return to the end in future. We'll do an end raiding episode at some stage where we'll go and find a bunch of different end cities, loot them all, and see what the possibilities are. For now though, I think it's probably time to pack all of this stuff back into our ender chest. Oh, we could have had one more shulker box, but it looks like we'll have to save that for later, and we'll return to our end gateway to head on home. I'll need to fly back in the direction of our original end city, but once we get up here, we should see the bridge that I built over to this island. Yep, there is my spruce bridge. I see it here in the distance. And as I mentioned before, we have 2 different options of traveling back to the end island. We can either choose the gateway that we came in by, which will teleport us to that outer ring of end gateways around the central island, or we can choose this other gateway here, which will take us back to the obsidian platform. And these gateways will spawn randomly. They will kind of generate out here in these outer islands. So if you need to, you can locate one of these gateways further out without having to return to the point at which you first entered the end. And it's through this gateway that I'm going to travel. So we'll ender pearl up through that block, and here we go. We end up back here at the obsidian platform, which has not yet replaced that block of spruce planks, but it's going to at some point. Anyway, now we can make our way back to the overworld through the central portal here in the end, and we end up back at our house, where I've had to turn my render distance back down again because there's a lot more to load in the overworld. So there we go. We have accomplished a lot in this episode. Of course, it rains immediately after I skip the night. Well, fair enough. But with our wings attached to our back, we now have the opportunity to fly around our world, and this is going to give us a whole different perspective on the terrain and the stuff that we built here. I'm pretty happy with it so far though. I've not seen this house from the air yet, which is actually quite remarkable, but I think it holds up. I quite like it. One thing's for sure, we are going to have to pay a lot more attention to what we do with our roofs from now on, but I think with our end city raid done and dusted, that is where we're going to leave it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. Folks, I do hope you've enjoyed raiding the end with me. Good luck on your own end raids, and hopefully you find that first Elytra before too long. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. My name has been Pixlriffs. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you folks soon. Take care, bye for now.